When you understand the Constitution of Iran, when you understand their belief system, when you understand the level they went through to deceive us about some of their key strategic weapon systems, and the fact that they have enriched uranium to 60%, for which there's no peaceful purpose, and the level of pain they're willing to endure to keep that, then a very disturbing image begins to evolve about what Iran intends to do. And this is why, my friends, you do not want Iran to develop an atomic bomb. Now, we view these things typically with our Western eyes, and our Western eyes fail to understand and grasp the significance of their governmental policy and their core belief systems and just where that might be driving them. For example, the Constitution of Iran has a call to export the revolution. And it's woven into the very several parts of that Constitution, both in the preamble and in the articles of the Constitution itself regarding export of revolution, foreign policy, and their military. For example, the preamble of the Iranian Constitution states that the Constitution provides the necessary basis for ensuring the continuation of the revolution at home and abroad. It will strive with other Islamic and popular movements to prepare the way for the formation of a single world community. Yeah, and then they've got part of the preamble also talks about their ideological army. And this applies to the regular Iranian military, the army, and the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the leadership that maintains things in line with the Shia 12er perspective. I'll explain that in a moment. And it says the army, whatever Constitution does this, the army of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, it's in the Constitution, will be responsible not only for guarding and preserving the frontiers of the country, but also for fulfilling the ideological mission of jihad in Allah's way. That is extended the sovereignty of Allah's law throughout the world. Again, single community, extending the law, Sharia law, throughout the world. So, and then they look at their own people, the Islamic people worldwide, especially the Shia, as being oppressed. So, we will find within Article 154 of the Iranian Constitution a section that deals with that. The Islamic Republic of Iran recognizes independence, freedom, and the rule of law. You got to remember, this is Sharia law, and justice as the rights of peoples of the world. And again, that's their people. Therefore, while completely refraining from interfering in the internal affairs of other countries, it supports right-seeking struggle of the oppressed, the Mushtata fun, however you say that, against the arrogant Mushtaka Brim everywhere in the world, everywhere in the world. So, yeah, you got to take this in context with the preamble, though. And then there's Article 3, Clause 16, saying the framing of foreign policy of the country is on the basis of Islamic criteria, brotherly commitment to all Muslims, and unsparing support for the oppressed of the world. So if you take it, the core mandate from the preamble mandates the Constitution, mandates a continuation of the revolution abroad for a one world, single community of Islam, a one world Islamic government. And the preamble for the military charges the IRGC with extending Allah's law throughout the world. That's their mission. Does this start to make a little sense now with them promoting all these proxy groups, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, and sending Hezbollah to Venezuela? Does that start to make sense? Article 154, of course, legitimizes supporting oppressed groups against so-called arrogant powers. And Article 3 establishes brotherly commitment to all Muslims as a state goal. So when you take all these things into consideration, they put together a picture. Now, they try to make their constitution look a little bit sane by saying they wouldn't interfere with internal affairs of the countries, but yet they want to export their Islamic revolution to the world to form a single community. So that does sink in what that really means. And so some of it may be in there just for fluff, not to scare other countries, but you got to understand their actual core belief system. And their core belief, they are Shia Muslims. Shias are about 10% of the Muslims worldwide. The rest of them are Sunni Muslims. And the division between Shia and Sunni began as soon as Muhammad died. They believe that the Muhammad al-Mahdi, I believe it's his 12th son, is the lineage they should follow. They believe he is still alive yet to this day. And the 12er Shia eschatology, which is a little bit of a subset of the Shia eschatology, the reappearance of the 12th Imam, again, Muhammad al-Mahdi, is a central event that resolves human history. Yeah, and while some don't think war is absolutely necessary to make it happen, the RGC leaders and so we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll break that down. So they do believe that they are instructed to start what would require to make this theology inevitable. So now there's two sects of the 12ers, and there is the activist, and there is the ones who believe that things will happen as they occur. But anyway, talking about that, let's go back. We'll come to that in a minute. Let's talk about the Mahdi, as he's usually called for short. They believe that he went into minor occultation in AD 874 and major occultation in 941 AD. I guess that means after that point you don't see him no more until he's supposed to come back. And like I said, it's believed that he is alive, but hidden from human sight by Allah's will. And some people think he's in this well, and he will come out of this well, the Jamkaran well. Which is at the Jamkaran Mosque in Qom, Iran. And devotees often drop letters in there for him to read, hoping that they'll get his message. So theologically, Shias don't necessarily believe that he's living in a cave. Some do, or in a well. Some do, but some think he's actually walking among us. And at the appointed time, he will reappear at the Kaaba in Mecca. That's that big square edifice in Mecca. It's believed to have a stone in it that probably has its origin in a meteorite. So some think she's coming out of the well. In fact, they've actually paved a road and adorned it for his march to Kaaba, coming out of Iran from that well in Qom. So quite a few of them do believe it that way. So the signs of his reappearance are called the Zucker, or Zuher, pardon me. And for them, they think there's going to be some universal injustice against the Shia people in particular, and the world will be filled with injustice and tyranny from their perspective. Now, you got to remember, they're the ones who it's okay to mow down their own citizens by the tens of thousands, or anybody that's standing in the way of the supreme leader, the RGC, and then the so-called Great War, the how do you say fitna. Many traditions believe a massive world-altering conflict will occur. And it's not just a local skirmish, it's a breakdown in global order. And they think the key villain is something called the Sufyani. And the Sufyani is believed to be descendants from some people out of Syria. They would seize control of part of the Levant and slaughter members of the prophet's family. And this could be the Israelis, maybe. I don't know how they fit that in modern eschatology, but a lot of them think that they're there because they do quite often believe in this apocalyptic final war, the final battle. So the Mahdi doesn't just appear to give a speech. He is viewed as a divine liberator who arrives when the faithful are on the brink of extinction. That means the Shia people would be on the brink of no longer existing. And then he's going to come back. See why they're willing to endure so much pain? That's part of it. But they believe upon his return to Mecca, the Mahdi is expected to raise an elite army of just 313 elite companions, and he will lead a campaign that will defeat the Sufyani and the Dajjal. The Dajjal is that's their version of the Antichrist and the deceiver. Now they do believe in return of Jesus Christ. The Muslims do believe that Jesus Christ is coming back, but they have a very different vision for his return. He's not coming back as the Lord and Savior, the king that's going to rule for 1,000 years. They believe that he is going to follow Muhammad and return alongside the Mahdi. And furthermore, they believe that he is going to he will unite the Abrahamic faiths, but they believe he's going to slay Christians. Jesus Christ, slay his own followers. But why they promote this? Because the Mahdi is going to create the paradise on earth. And it's not just a spiritual one, it's a global government. That's that global community language out of the preamble of the Islamic regime's Iranian constitution. So they believe there'll be total justice as they define justice, remember, under Sharia law. And they think that poverty, war, and hunger will be eliminated for them. The Mahdi is said to redistribute wealth so effectively nobody will even be eligible to receive charity. Sounds great. Perfect knowledge. We have great knowledge. But here is where the controversy lies. It's in what's called the hastening controversy. Remember I said there's a couple of different sects of the Twelver religion. There's the quietist. There are the more traditional scholars who believe that they must simply wait for Allah's timing. Now, what do they do then? Is jihad part of it? What do they want to do after the wait? I don't know. But there's the activist. And this is where some of your hardline factions that started with this society, the Hajjate Society, I believe is how that's said. But these activists are very prevalent in the IRGC today. They seem to be, the IRGC leaders seem to all fit within this activist cult of the Twelver religion. And so does the supreme leader and many key people in government. They don't get to those positions unless they have this faith. So what they believe is they have to increase chaos or opposing the arrogant powers. And that includes the United States, the West, and of course Israel. But you got to remember, they consider Israel the little Satan and America the big Satan. And they're no fans of Europe by any stretch of the imagination. The arrogant powers are all of the Western powers and their view, the eschatology. And they believe they can hasten the return of the Iman. So this hastening philosophy is often what fuels the apocalyptic rhetoric seen in certain current regional conflicts. If a leader believes they're living in the time of the Safani, then a war is no longer a tragedy to be avoided. It's a theological milestone that must be embraced. So, does this make sense to you? Uh, they, the core belief of the leadership of the IRGC is that they have to be activist oriented to help bring the Mahdi to Earth. And the sooner they do that, the sooner they'll all have their paradise. What do they get in their paradise? Do they get 12 virgins, 72 virgins like having to die if they survive through this stuff? What is their paradise? How would they define that entirely? Well, I don't know that fully, but they believe this so fervently that they do a lot of things that don't make sense from the Western standpoint, in the Western mind. They have deceived us in the development of their ballistic missiles. They claimed that no ballistic missile they had was capable of launching beyond 2,000 kilometers. They said that so as not to alarm people in the Western world. Turns out they just recently fired two toward Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, 4,000 kilometers away. That means that almost every single European capital is in range of that missile. Much more powerful, much farther reach than we thought. Now, Iran has also launched a satellite. A satellite launching rocket has the capacity to actually be an intercontinental ballistic missile. We understand they had ICBMs on the drawing board too. So, and given their prodigious rate of missile building, they were making a lot of missiles really fast. So this stuff starts to add up. Why would you enrich uranium to 60%? There is absolutely no reason, peaceful reason, to enrich uranium that far. I mean, reactors just take a few percent to run for making nuclear power. Even for research purposes, the top end shouldn't be over 20%. 60% is on the way to being a weapons grade material. Now, if you look at the amount of energy and effort required to get to 60%, it's like, even though it's 6% enrichment, it's actually more like 90% of the effort to get there. The remaining effort is measured in weeks, and they had 940 kilograms of this stuff. 940 kilograms. Bear in mind, it's 2.2 pounds per kilogram. So this is a lot of highly enriched radioactive material, a lot. And it's thought that they could build 11 uranium bombs with this. Yeah, you can make a nuclear bomb out of uranium. And the United States actually built one and used it in World War II. It's called the Little Boy. We dropped it from the Enola Gay. So that is a historical example of a uranium bomb running about 15 kilotons. So that is something that can be done. Now, what else they would do in time, we don't know. What else they might have had hidden in other mountain research facilities, we don't know. They may have actually been on the verge of starting to develop plutonium for plutonium bombs. We don't know. So there's a whole lot here that, the Fat Man was a plutonium bomb. But, uranium plutonium could be used as a trigger for the fusion bomb, a hydrogen bomb, much more powerful down the road. So we don't know exactly where they were going with all this. We do know they had more than they needed for any peaceful purpose. And, you wouldn't even have to put these things on a missile. If you took a couple of them and put them in a ship and sent them, most of the major cities in the world are by the ocean. You could send a ship in near vicinity of a major city and do a lot of damage with these things. For example, in Israel, most of the people live in Tel Aviv and Haifa, which are both on the Mediterranean coast. New York City, coast. Washington, D.C., get up the Potomac River. Yeah, it's easy water access. Think about all our major cities that have easy water access. So you wouldn't even have to launch these things on a missile. Just put them on a boat and get it up close and detonate it. Maybe even a cargo container. So who knows what kind of plans they might have had in mind. And then again, you build rockets big enough, strong enough, you can launch these bombs too. And they were developing they've been launching satellites for some time. To say they couldn't do it, don't go there, because it's doable. You just got to build a big enough launcher. And they were even talking about having, yeah, Iran supposedly had a manned space program. They were going to launch an astronaut. That may have been a cover for development a stronger, more powerful ICBM capable of carrying these uranium bombs. Now, my friends, when you look at all this stuff in context, they could have developed more. They could have just kept enriching. They had enough to make 11. If they had kept going, would it have been 22? Uh, and it would have just taken weeks to go from once they made the decision, whenever they would make the decision to further enrich this stuff, it would take weeks to get it to the 90%. Everybody's always said it was a week away. No, it's a few weeks, but that's doable in short order of time. So that is something to be concerned about. So when you take into context of what degree of suffering, the fact they deceived us with their military capabilities, with the range of their short-range ballistic missiles, which isn't that short, they're regional, they're capable of reaching 4,000 kilometers, some of them, and they have been kicking the ball down the road in negotiations all the time while they continue to reach more of this stuff, playing games with negotiators under treaties and everything else. Now, the JPOT, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Agreement between the West and Iran, didn't stop them. It just kind of put a governor on it a little bit, but they were still doing this stuff, and they were still breaking really that agreement. So, my friends, all this stuff is to be taken into consideration that Iran was had it in their constitution. They've got it in their religion to actually actively try to bring about the conditions that would bring the 12th Mahdi out of his cave or wherever he had to come from. And furthermore, when you think about for the Mahdi to come out, they've got to be near the point of extinction, which they're not at that point yet. We haven't bombed on that point. In fact, for all the probably 30,000 strikes between the U.S. and Israel, we've only actually ended the lives of about 3,500, something like that, Iranians. We've been very surgical with these strikes to not take out too many lives in the past. Now, maybe that will change if we directly target the IRGC to give the protesters in Iran a chance to take over their country. I don't know what's coming next. It could be that we'll just back out. What they're hoping and banking on and trying to kick the can down the road and negotiating and making out like they will negotiate, I don't think they're going to give up their nuclear materials. If they actually do give them up to, they'll probably give them to Russia or China under some kind of wink, wink, nod, nod. Hey, this is a loan. We can get it back under the right circumstances, a kind of a secret agreement. You got to remember, China and Russia are sponsors of Iran. So they might just have a little agreement, and maybe everything they say is going there isn't going there. Maybe they send something else, a lower enriched uranium, and make out bait and switch. I don't know. North Korea did a bait and switch with us on a satellite launch, which I might do another topic on. So bait and switch is not outside the realm of possibilities. But I think the real truth is they're just trying to kick the can down the road because they think they wait long enough. The United States Congress will get rested with the War Powers Act as we get closer to the midterms that Trump will have to back down or his party is going to be decimated and he will likely be impeached himself and then he'll get a friendly president who will love and hug them and let them go back to life and business as normal. So I don't know, my friends. They want to keep kicking the can down the road because they really believe in their faith that they will win. They really believe that all they got to do is hold out and the stars will line up for them and they will endure. So now that's what they believe. That doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. That just fits within their beliefs. And this is why, even if you think this stuff isn't likely, you got to consider it's possible. And if it's only 20% possible, that's too high. That's why Iran, look, we already know they've been a state sponsor of terrorism. They have already attacked a lot of Americans. They have attacked our embassy in Lebanon. They blew up our Marine barracks in Beirut. They have attacked two of our embassies, one in Tanzania, which you probably call Tanzania, and in Kenya, blew them to smithereens. They have uh, provided IEDs to blow up our soldiers in Iran and Afghanistan. That's what General Soleimani did. That's why Trump took him out, because he was a mastermind behind that. They have been sending uh, um, uh, Hezbollah agents, proxies, into Venezuela. And some of them have probably been sneaking into the United States of America. So to think that they're not dangerous is a misnomer. If they had continued, if we hadn't went in when we did, uh, they were building missiles and drones by the tens of thousands and missiles by the thousands. They would have had so many, right now we've already, actually, they've had so many, it gave us a handful. We've not been able really to contend with the sheer quantity of drones and missiles that they've had. Not easily. They've oversaturated our missile defense systems. We weren't prepared for drone warfare. So it's taken United States forces by surprise. Had this went on longer before the United States hit, they would have had far more and made it far more difficult and have been far harder to have dealt with them. At best, we might have knocked them back 10 years from their goal. If we end now and pull out, they'll just get right back marching in the same direction. I hope that the protesters in Iran can take over and clean house and get this stuff out. That's a hope. But they might need a little assistance because, for the most part, they're not armed, and the IRGC and their Basij forces are heavily armed. So the prospects are maybe a little bit more bombing might knock them down enough for the protesters to take over. I don't know. What I'm seeing is it looks like Trump is losing the stomach for that. So this is something we may have to face down the road. This whole thing with the Hormuz, yeah, we're all paying for gas, but had the day come that they wanted to activate, the day come that they wanted to go ahead and put their game in motion, they would have closed the Strait of Hormuz then. This was probably bound to happen eventually, and they might have done it in conjunction with a ploy by Iran. Iran was, well, China. China was probably planning to try to activate the Iranians when they went into Taiwan, which they probably had planned to do in 2027 or sometime between 2027 to 2029, which would have gave Iran more time to build more bombs and actually start enrichment programs to take it closer to 90% had they decided to do that, including some intercontinental ballistic missiles. So we would have had a huge surprise on our flank from Iran. Mao Zedong won the war against the KMT forces, which ran the Republic of China prior to their insurrection and running them out to the island of Formosa, which we know is Taiwan. The philosophy of Mao Zedong was to surround the cities in the countryside, by the countryside, to surround the cities. And they've extended that philosophy internationally, considering the United States and certain Western nations to be the cities, and these other countries like Iran to be the countryside. So they've been planning to use their proxies and other networks, and the fact that we're trying to choke off key points in trade and like the Panama Canal and places like that, and have forces maybe in Cuba, so in Venezuela. So they had their plans to basically encircle us in the same way, us and the entire Western world, perhaps, but they wanted to bring us down. And as I mentioned before, there's a speech that's alleged by a former defense minister of China to claim that the whole war with Taiwan was a distraction. Their main target was the US of A, and that the real plan was to use biowarfare upon us. So this all fits in a bigger, broader context. So based on that supposition, I think a war with Iran was eventually inevitable. And if you got to have a war, sometimes, to quote Putin, if you know you're going to be hit, strike first. No, I'm not a fan of Putin. I'm just talking about philosophy, a military philosophy. So, it's not a pretty picture. I wasn't for going into this war because I thought we needed our munitions to deal with the bigger threat being China. But if we were able to cut off their fuel supplies from the Mideast and Venezuela both, then we would have had China in a bind that would have perhaps taken the wind out of their sails for their ambitions. Now, it's not clear that that will be the outcome, especially if we negotiate a deal with Iran. They're going to be selling in China again. It'll be wide open. So I'm not sure that objective will be accomplished in this war. My opinion, though, is that once you start a war like this, you probably ought to finish it. You ought to get it to the level that at least you've taken the teeth out of the bear, dragon, whatever that lion. They took the lion off their flag. The lion was from the Persian days and the previous Shah. So whatever that bat-looking creature is on their flag. So, guys, this is serious. And that's why I went from being against the war, being against going into thinking, well, now that we're in it, we ought to win it, whatever that means. We're not winning right now. We could. We have the power to do more militarily, but do we have the willpower as a nation? Probably not. And history has shown that if you try to engage in a war that the public don't back, you better do it fast, and you better hit fast and hit hard. But it's not looking good right now. The long-term implications are very negative. So these are things we got to take into account. So let's really hope that the protesters take over the country there. That's our best hope at this point in time. A single best hope. Or maybe, just maybe we can go in it. Maybe if the IRGC forces are feeling the pain big enough, they might give up that nuclear material. You can hope and pray. But I don't see it. I don't think it's happening. If it does, hey, I will happily admit I'm wrong, and I will be thrilled. Sometimes it's good to be wrong, but just looking at it and knowing where they're coming from, it's hard to believe. Really hard to believe. Now, some of the people in the government, the president, maybe even Aragachi, they might be willing to negotiate that to that point. The RGC, no. The Ayatollahs, no. I don't see that, especially the RGC. They're very hard on this. All right. I've said enough about that. You probably will not agree with this. So tell me about it in the chat below. You don't mean you got to bail out from my channel. I'm just telling you what my perspective is on this. So you disagree? Tell me what you think about it. You agree? Tell me that too. And some people want to have opinions or off here and there and yonder. It's all about the Albanians, ain't it? You know, somebody probably come in and tell me that in the chat. The Albania, they're really running it all. They just look poor and defeated. Who knows? I get some strange comments sometimes. But hey, it's all interesting. But all I got to say is let's hope and pray, prep and pray. You better have your preps together because this may not end well. This may not. So thank you for watching. And with that, I'm going to say, watch right here for another video on this topic. And Greg out.